really strongly that I should go over the recording of Joseph's life that we see in the book of Genesis. Sometimes, I take for granted some of these accounts of the different lives of those that came before us, and because I know the story so well, I assume everybody does, but I think it's good to reflect and to look back, even if all of us do know it, because there is, when you get a chance to look at somebody's life, 50 years, and you get to read it all in one sitting, you're hitting the highlights, and there's so much in there that you can relate to yourself in different ways, but there's always something new you can learn. So we're going to be in the book of Genesis tonight, and it really, if you want to know about Joseph's history, you really need to start with Genesis chapter 1, but we're going to start in chapter 37, and God had a covenant with a man named Abraham, and Abraham had a son named Isaac, and Isaac had twins, and his son Jacob was the younger of the twins, and Jacob ended up having 12 sons. So this promise from God to give them blessings has followed down this family line, and we are learning about these 12 sons of Jacob, okay? So how culture worked back then is the firstborn to a man would be the one that would kind of carry on the legacy, all right? They would inherit the majority of the wealth and the prestige and the title. And so Jacob really didn't get his wealth from his father. He ended up running away because he got into a big tiff with his brother. And Jacob ended up working for his two wives, their dad. And he ended up earning a lot of his wealth. So now he's got 12 sons, and a lot of his wealth was in livestock. So he's got these boys that are running the family farm, as I'm going to say it. It wasn't really that way back then. They had a lot of sheep, and they were shepherds, and they'd be out with the animals. And the oldest 10 kind of would go off and do that. Now, his favorite wife had a lot of hard times having kids. So in their old age, she was finally blessed with children. The first child she had was Joseph, and then he had a younger brother as well. So Joseph is her firstborn. And because, she was his favorite wife, and I'm just totally speculating here, but I'm sure she was kind of like, hey, I know he's your 11th son, but, he's special to me, and I'm special to you, and does he really have to go out there with those guys? And what if a wild animal gets him? I don't know if she said this, but as a mom, I would probably be thinking that, right? So to relieve the burden and the worry, this could be why this happened, we don't really know, but Joseph wasn't like the other 10 that were out in the fields taking care of the animals. Joseph was kept home more, and he was more in the tents, and I'm assuming maybe he's learning how to do the numbers, right? Maybe he's learning how to run a household. But he was so favored by his father that his father had saved all these different scraps of really nice material and colorful material. You have to understand, back then you couldn't go to Joann's Fabrics and just pick out your favorite color and make yourself whatever. There would be a lot of money spent for fabric and dyes that were made for different things. And so his coat was so unique that we now, 5,000 years later, have Broadway shows about his coat, Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat or whatever it is, right? And so this coat, has gone down in infamy. So we know about this beautiful coat that he had. So this coat was a blessing. This coat was like a promotion for him, right? He wasn't just, out in the fields with his other brothers. He was so recognized by his family, by his father, that he got the special coat. But this promotion ended up bringing punishment. Isn't that sucky when that happens? I don't know about you, right? Has that ever happened to you where maybe you're at a job and you get promoted and your coworkers and you got along great, but now you're the boss and all of a sudden they're making you pay. Maybe they wanted that position and you got the position, and all of a sudden now they're not very nice to you at work, or they're not turning in their reports like they're supposed to. Well, you're the boss, you better figure it out, right? So Joseph's promotion, right? Joseph's blessing of this coat and being honored by his father brought this jealousy among his brothers. But when he got this really cool thing from God, which was a dream, and their culture is much different than ours, they totally knew and understood that dreams came from God, that they had meaning. If you ever want to learn about dreams, I occasionally do a dream class, and we get out of our Western thinking mind, meaning American mind, and we go into a Middle Eastern thinking of how Joseph's family even thought. And we look at the symbolism and understand that dreams come from God, and we interpret them, and it's really cool. But their culture, they knew. No one had to say, well, I think this is from God. When he told people about his dream, they all knew it was from God. They all knew what the symbolism meant. Nobody had to ask. And his dream was that his brothers would bow down to him. And then he had another dream that not only of his brothers bowing down to him, but his mom and dad bowing down to him. And again, this seems like a blessing, like, hey, I'm God. I'm telling you, one day, those guys who treat you like the little brother and kick you around, one day they're going to be bowing down to you. Hey, I'm going to reaffirm this. I'm going to tell you again, not only will your brothers be bowing down to you, but your mom and dad as well. Now, in that culture, that's unheard of, right? You looked up to your family, your older brothers, you especially looked up to your father. They're not going to bow down to you. And so at first the brothers were really upset by this, but then eventually his dad even, what do you mean, your brothers, even me, I'm going to bow down to you? So he tells them about this dream. They're not really happy about it. And he then, kind of tucks that away, and he's living his life, but his brothers have not forgotten about this. Not only, right, does their dad favor him, and now he's hearing from God that they're going to be bowing down to him. So they're like, we've got to do something. So we see here in Genesis chapter 37, as Joseph is at home and his brothers have gone off, and his dad hasn't seen the brothers or the flocks for a while, so he sends him. He says here in verse 12, it says, now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem. And Israel, which was Jacob's name from God, so Jacob said to Joseph, as you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them. Very well, Joseph replied. So he said to him, go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me. So he sent him off. So he's going around and he's looking for his brothers, and the brothers see him coming. Why? Because of this promotion, his coat of all these colors. Like, who else would be walking around with that flashy of a coat? They knew it was Joseph. So in verse 17, he learns that they've moved on from the original place, and he's trying to find them. They have moved on from here, the man answered. I heard them say, let's go on to Donath. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Donath. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns, and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. He's got one brother with a little bit of... Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing. They took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty, and there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat their meal. They looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. So when the Mennonite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy isn't here. Where can I turn now?" Then they got Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped it in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to the father and said, "We found this. Examine it, whether to see if it is your son's robe." He recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned for his son many days. All of his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. All right, so his promotion of being the son or the favorite son of his father has caused this havoc. And then on top of it, when he gets this blessing or promotion from God, knowing that one day he was going to rule and they were going to bow down to him, and when he tells them, this caused them to rise up and say, "We need to stop him, we need to kill him." And he gets sent off to become a slave in Egypt. Now, basically, he's being delayed from what the promises that God gave him were, right? His promises were that his brothers and them were going to bow down to him. And it's not happening yet. Have you ever had like a dream? Like we're the dream center, and we hope to have dreams for people, right? Sometimes people have a dream to finish college, and something delays them along the way. And when those delays come, it's really easy to give up. It's really easy for Satan to convince you, "See, it's not meant to be. Who did you think you are? You can't do that." But a dream doesn't necessarily happen the moment you have it. We don't call things that we're going to do tomorrow dreams. I don't say here, "Oh, I dream of stopping at Rally's on my way home tonight and getting a hot dog." I don't say that, do I? I say, "I'm going to stop by Rally's on my way home and get a hot dog." We don't dream about things that we're able to do. We dream about things that haven't occurred yet, or that we don't have the ability to do yet, or something that we have to obtain. When I was single, I used to dream of one day being married. When I remember being a young girl, my dad died when I was 11, so this had to be before I turned 11. I remember telling my dad, like, "I really want to have kids, but what if Jesus comes back?" Right? Because back then we always talk about the rapture. What if Jesus comes back and I'm in heaven and I haven't had any children yet? Would God let me have children? And I remember my dad saying, like, "I think you're probably going to have kids before the rapture happens. But what if?" Well, God gives you the desires of your heart. Maybe he'll let, at that point, he wasn't going to convince this 10-year-old girl that I was going to make it. Like, I was so concerned about that because I just love little kids and I just wanted to have a little kid. And I remember that was a dream. That wasn't something I was going to go out and do tomorrow. Had no desire to do that. I just knew that one day I wanted to be able to have children. That was a dream that was inside of my heart. So Joseph is probably thinking, like, okay, my dad favored me. God told me that one day I would be head brother. And now I am on my way to who knows where. I'm sure it could have been really easy, and we don't know how he thought during this time, for him to just give up on that dream, for him to say, "This is never going to happen." And so we have to apply that to our lives. When something happens to us that totally takes us off the rails. Are we going to look at it as my dreams have been dashed or my dreams have been delayed? And what does God have for me in this delay? So the story doesn't end with him, going off to Egypt, and that's all we know about him, and we never hear from him again, and we just assume God blessed him in some other way. We actually have it recorded, and we know what happened. So Joseph ends up being sold as a slave to a man by the name of Potiphar, and Potiphar was the captain of the guard, of Pharaoh's guard. Okay, so Pharaoh had this select group of men that would guard him, guard his family, guard his palaces. And this guy was the head guy. So this guy knows security. He probably doesn't trust just anybody. Like, this guy is literally spending his entire life training other men to look out for thieves and for murderers and for rascals and anybody that would try to get into a really nice place and steal. It probably was a hard man to work for. Especially in the beginning, if he didn't trust you, right? Like here, somebody's just getting this slave. I'm sure Joseph did not get there on his first day and get in charge to watch this guy's valuables. This guy wouldn't have done that. He would have put Joseph, right? He probably had lots of other people over him. Let's just be honest here. So he probably had somebody that used him just to go get me water. I mean, we forget that there's no running water. Like, he might have literally spent all day going back and forth from a well to a kitchen or to a bath and just spent his entire day getting water. Maybe, he got promoted and he could just, scrub floors. But in the midst of this punishment, God looked down and said, all right, my favor that was on you, that made your father favor you over everybody else, my favor doesn't leave you because you're not in the place that you're supposed to be. See, sometimes we get ourselves out of the place we're supposed to be. Sometimes the people around us do something and it causes us to get out of the place we're supposed to be, or at least the place we think we're supposed to be. His brothers took him out of his home life and put him in a different place. But God's blessing and favor doesn't stop following you. I love it. There's a passage, I don't know if it's Psalms, I think it's Psalms, might be Proverbs, where it talks about how much God loves you. And I remember it says that God's love or blessings chase you. It doesn't say we chase after God's love and we chase after God's blessings and maybe one day we'll catch it. It says, man, we're running. Sometimes I'm running in the wrong direction, but God's love is chasing me. God's blessings is chasing me. And Joseph finds himself in Egypt at some guy's house who's, hard on the people he's around. And favor followed him there. If we look here in Genesis chapter 39, it says in verse 1, now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian, who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph. That's his favor. That's his blessing. So that Joseph prospered, right? Joseph prospered. And he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, Joseph, and that the Lord gave Joseph success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes of Potiphar and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put Joseph in charge of his household and all of that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now, that is called recognition, folks. See, God's blessing and favor may be on your life. You may be a blessing to your family. You may be a blessing to your boss. But unless they recognize it and they put you in charge and they let you start, okay, God's with you. God gave him some good advice there and did this and that, and he did it, and now we're blessed. When you get recognized for that and you get put in positions now of promotion, God blesses not only you, but those that are around you, the ones that recognize that in you, the ones that promoted you. See, this can happen in your life with like friends or with people around you. Like you might have a pastor or a boss or somebody else that maybe God is just over them, man, and whatever decision they make, it blesses. And you might recognize that, and you might say, man, boy, when you buy stocks in the stock market, it always goes great, and I recognize that in you. And can you give me some advice? And all of a sudden, you start following somebody's advice who's blessed in a certain way, and all of a sudden, you start being blessed. Has that ever happened to you? I mean, there's times like when the kids are little. I remember calling my mom and saying, like, Mom, I don't know what to do with this kid. But I knew that she had kids that, did really well and this and that. And I took her advice. I recognized in her the blessing. And I took that advice, invited that advice. And all of a sudden now I'm being blessed in this area. These things can happen to you. They can be on you, a blessing and favor from God. As Christians, we have the Holy Spirit on us and in us. And when it says, all who call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And when Jesus went to the cross, he did that so we may be adopted into God's family. It says that his Spirit is in us, and we may cry out, Abba, Father, meaning Daddy. And now all of a sudden, we're recognizing, God, you've got this blessing, and your favor falls down upon us, and I want that in my life. And when other people recognize that and put you in positions of promotion, wonderful things happen. Now, for Joseph, the story doesn't end with him just running this guy's house. No. Promotion came with a punishment. And unfortunately, in his life, after years of being there and years of Potiphar understanding this, something bad happens. It goes on. It says here at the end of that verse we were just at, verse 6, it says, Now Joseph was well built and handsome. And after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, Come to bed with me. But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, My master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns has been entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? He didn't say and sin against Potiphar. See, we think when we hear him describe that and say, Potiphar's put me in charge. Nobody else has any other authority other than me. Potiphar has said I can do anything except to have you. I wouldn't want to sin against Potiphar. But he knew that his promotion and his blessings in his life did not come from Potiphar. He knew that his blessings in his life came from God. So sometimes we have this dream, right? And we think like, okay, well, if I could get myself in this position, then maybe my dream can come true. Satan could have convinced him, man, you know what? Her family's really the one with a lot of money. Maybe if you start sleeping with her, maybe something could happen to Potiphar, and then, man, you could be the man of the house. But he did not try to go down that lane. He didn't try to figure out, how do I make this dream succeed? He was waiting on God, and the one he didn't want to sin against was God. And he said, look, if I am with you, I'm not sinning against him. I'm not sinning against you. I will not sin against God, because God is the one that put him in this position of promotion. So he says, no. He says, how then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? I love that, because how then could I, after he made all of these statements? What were the statements he made? No one is greater in this house than me. My master has withheld nothing from me except for you. How then could I sin against God? What is he saying? God is the one that gave me all of that. And although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. I think a lot of times when we hear this story, we think like she propositioned him once, he said no and ran away, and he got put in jail. But that's not true. She tempted him, it says, day after day. And sometimes when we get promoted, we get tempted day after day. Why? Because Satan is the thief who comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. That's scripture. Jesus says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. One of the times Jesus talks about Satan roaming around like a roaring lion. It doesn't say he's a lion and that he can take away your promotion. He says he's like a roaring lion. He's yelling out and he's trying to scare you, right? He's tempting you. That's why part of the Our Father prayer is, lead me not into temptation, but deliver me from the evil one. Why is that part of a daily prayer? Because every single day Satan is going to try to tempt you. This woman came against Joseph every single day. See, somebody couldn't come to him and tempt him with food that he wasn't supposed to eat. They couldn't come and tempt him with riches. Why? Because it says he had access to everything in that house. See, Satan doesn't tempt you with things that you already, have no problem with, right? If you have $1 million in the bank, Satan's not going to try to tempt you to shoplift gum. I mean, I know some people still do that, and that becomes an addiction, but it's not like justified in your head because you have the wealth at home. Satan always comes and tempts you with something you don't have, something that you maybe envy that somebody else has, something that you want. You know what? There might have been a part of Joseph that thought, man, she's a good-looking woman. Wish I had a wife. We don't know that. Maybe he thought that. Maybe she was beautiful. Maybe he was sad that he didn't have a wife at that time. But you can be tempted with something that you really do want and say no. And in this case, he kept saying no, and he did the right thing. But she still persisted. Eventually, right, it says one day he went into the house to tend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, come to bed with me. But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. Look, she said, this Hebrew has brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. And when he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house. She kept his cloak beside her until the master came home. Then she told him the story. That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house. When his master heard the story, his wife told him, saying, this is how your slave treated me. He burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in a prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But when Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. And it goes on, and we'll look at that. But I want to stop for a minute to say, this promotion that he had wasn't the fulfillment of his dream. But man, it felt good along the way. I could forget about that dream. I don't need my brothers falling down to me. I got run of this whole place. Anything I do for this guy prospers. I'm not scrubbing floors anymore. Maybe I'll just stay here. Look at my cloak. I got another coat. I got another coat that symbolizes I'm the chief person in this place. See, back then, clothing and color all represented different things. It was a status symbol. And what happened? His cloak gets taken away again. Every single time somebody puts something on his shoulders and says, okay, promotion has come, and you think that, okay, well, this is the end of it. This is where I'm going to be. And it gets ripped away. You think, oh, that's the end of my dream. Now, for Joseph, this has happened twice. I am sure he was not a happy camper. I'm sure at this point, maybe he'll turn his back on God. I'm sure at this point, maybe he'll just be like, forget this. Now, of course, we ended here with it saying that he got sent to prison. It says, but while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all of those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. See, now he's walking around Egypt saying, okay, when I got to Egypt, they didn't know about my older brothers. They didn't know I'm just an 11th son. And I was able to work hard, and I got promoted. Now he's in Egypt, not only a slave, but an accused of sexual assault. That's like pretty damaging, right? Now he's got this reputation. He's been accused. And this wasn't a culture where they would say, well, is this true? No. If somebody of that social status said somebody like that did that, he should have been killed. But it was probably God's favor and what he had done for Potiphar that spared him to just be sent to prison. And what happens there? The prison guard, the guy that's supposed to be in charge, making sure everything is taken care of, the guy with the keys to make sure everybody stays in their cell, the guy that's supposed to make sure everything's taken care of, he just hands it all over to Joseph. Here you go, Joseph, you take care of them all. Because God's favor was on Joseph. See, you don't need your boss's favor. You don't need your neighbor's favor. You don't need the government's favor. You just need God's. If God's favor is on you and somebody that is supposed to give you a promotion hates you, God will take care of that. If God has to move that person on to a different position to get somebody there that's going to promote you, he can do that. If God needs to all of a sudden have somebody else offer you a better job with better pay, he can do that. God's favor knows how to get the blessing to you, and you don't need to worry about it. Well, Mary, how do I get God's favor? I want that. All you have to do is ask. Well, that doesn't sound like that's right. Can I really ask for something like that? Well, you know what? My children ask me for all kinds of things. And there has been yet that they've asked me for something that I have been like, I can't believe you asked me for that. Why? Because I am their source. Me and their father, right? We are their source. Who else would they ask? They're not showing up at your house saying, hey, I need a new pair of Nikes. They go to their parent. They go to their provider. They go to their protector. They go to the one that loves them unconditionally. They go to the one who is there day after day and will never leave them nor forsake them. Who are you going to ask for favor? Who are you going to ask for promotion? Who are you going to go to and say, hey, I need a raise? You see all these bills? I don't have enough to pay it. You go to your source. And it's not your employer. It is not the government. Your source of your provider and your protection and your blessing and your favor is God. And I promise you, if you ask him for favor, he's not going to be mad at you. He's going to give that to you. You might get delayed along the way. You might not have it happen the way you think, but it's coming because you asked. Well, why? God knows what I need. Why do I need to ask? Because he's a gentleman. He doesn't just force himself on you. You need to ask. Now, Joseph has this favor on him. So now he's in the prison, and he's taking care of the people around him. Now, you know what's interesting? Is it'd be really easy for Joseph to say, leave me alone. I'm in my room. Give me a piece of bread. I'm not helping out anymore. I helped out at Potiphar's house, and I got in trouble. I helped out with my dad and with his household, and what did it do? It got me in trouble. I'm not going to be diligent anymore. I'm not going to go and do the right thing anymore. Because why? Because all it does is give me trouble. No, Joseph didn't do that. He buckled down and he worked hard. Well, did he do that for pay? He was in prison. He didn't get any pay. He got a little more freedom, I'm sure, but that freedom came at a cost of hard work. He probably sat back and said, look, if that guard is sitting there eating whatever he wants, I get the scraps from his table, and I'm doing all the hard work. Why am I doing this? We can do that, oh man, especially in the culture we're in today. I'm not going to help out. I'm not going to do that. What's in it for me? Nothing. Sometimes it's nothing. It's not a measure of what you're going to get in return. It's a measure of your character. Your blessings sometimes come from your character and from what you do. Now, sometimes blessings just come from God because he is good. But there is earthly laws that apply, right? The law of gravity applies. You throw something up, it comes down. You tithe your offerings, you get a multiplication back. You help people, you have good character, you do what is right, you get blessings back. Now you can also ask God for a blessing that you don't even deserve, and God will give that to you. Why? Because you're his child. But I like both. I like to work hard, get that blessing, and ask God for more. But what's interesting is, like, we're all so unique. Like, some of our blessings are different than other people's blessings, and sometimes we don't understand why. But in this case, Joseph worked hard. I wonder if he is still in the back of his head saying, God gave me that dream. I know it's him. And even though it's delayed, it's going to happen. He was a dreamer. He did believe and understand the dreams. So this next chapter, I'm not going to read it all verse by verse, but I want you to check it out when you get home if you want to. It's chapter 40. What happens is Joseph's in charge. He's checking on everybody, making sure they have what they need. And a lot of prisons back at that time, different times, they didn't provide food. You would have your family members bring you food. But I think the reason why it was Pharaoh's prison is maybe there was a provision of food that Pharaoh had for them, because sometimes he would throw somebody there just because he was mad for a while, and then they'd come back out. And maybe that's why Potiphar put him in that prison. I don't know, right? We don't know the details of how they operated their prison. But we do know that Joseph would go, and he was attending and talking to all the different prisoners. And while he was there, 2 guys get thrown in that worked directly with Pharaoh. One was a cupbearer, and one was a baker. And he's talking to them, and boy, man, Pharaoh had a bad day. He didn't like what he was drinking, and he didn't like what he was eating, and so whoop, in the guys go. Got the baker, he's got the cup maker, or the cupbearer. He would bring him the wine or drink, whatever he might have been drinking. And while they are there, they both have a dream, but their dreams are a little bit different. And Joseph overhears them talking about dreams, and they're talking about their dream, and they're trying to figure out what it meant. And Joseph is like, hey. God, the God I serve, can tell me what your dream is. I know how to interpret dreams, right? And he acknowledges, it's not me, I'm not so great, but it's the God I serve. He gives me that wisdom, and I can interpret your dreams. Tell me about your dreams. So one of them says, oh, I had this dream, and I'm out in the sun, and I've got these baskets of baked goods on my head, and the birds come and eat it all. There's 3 baskets. The other guy says, oh, I'm, a cupbearer, and I have this, I don't know if it was 3 cups or what it was, but the 3 was there. And he squeezed the grapes into a cup of the juice, and he hands it to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh starts drinking it. So Joseph's got this Holy Spirit wisdom on him. He's got this favor, and he looks at him and goes, I know what this means. He goes, in 3 days, you, baker, you're going to have your head chopped off, and you're going to be killed, and the birds are going to come and peck at your flesh. But you, cupbearer, in 3 days, you're going back. And you're going to again bring the drink to Pharaoh. And please, when you're there, tell him about me. Tell him that I am a Hebrew boy that was sold into slavery and I've been falsely accused. Please tell him about me. Well, 3 days go by, and Pharaoh calls the guys and looks at the baker and says, you're done, cut his head off. And the birds pecked at his flesh. But the cupbearer, he says, all right, you're back. You're my guy. Now, in the midst of all of this, it says the cupbearer forgot. I think the cupbearer was just like, you just cut that guy's head off. I'm not opening my mouth. Thank you, sir. I'm going to go stand over here in the corner. Maybe I'll tell him next week, and then he kind of forgot. But that's what happens, right? The story didn't get told to Pharaoh about Joseph. So years go by. And Joseph is working hard, serving the prisoners, thinking, this is it. Oh, maybe one day my brothers are all going to end up in Egypt, and they're all going to get arrested and be in the prison, and they're going to have to bow down to me because I'm the one with the keys. I don't know. Maybe he thought that. Maybe he thought that was the end of his dream, right? I don't know. Could have been. But it wasn't the end. He was delayed, though. He was delayed along the way for the dream fulfillment. And eventually, something happens to somebody in a position to rescue Joseph. And it's the Pharaoh. He has a dream. And he has this persistent dream. It's very vivid. It won't go away. And he begins to get frustrated. And he says, I don't know what this dream means, but it won't leave me. Somebody's got to tell me what it means. One of the things we learn and talk about in our dream class is that when somebody is able to interpret it in such a way that it's correct, you know in your heart. Like, you might say, hey, I had this dream, and ABC happened, and somebody might go, oh, it means XYZ, and you might like, no, I don't think that's what it means. But then all of a sudden somebody else comes along and says, I know what it means 1, 2, 3, and you're like, oh, I can feel it, I know it. See, all these guys came to Pharaoh, all of his wise guys. I always like to call them wise guys, because they would have all these men, that were advisors and from different places, and some of them, were astrologers and this and that, and they had all these ways of doing things. They were his wise guys. So he'd call his wise guys in, and he'd be like, this was my dream. Somebody tell me what it means. Oh, great Pharaoh, this is what it means. No, it didn't sit right. Oh, great Pharaoh, this is what it means. No. Oh, great Pharaoh, this is what it means. No. God allowed this situation to happen, for Pharaoh to have this dream, and for none of those interpretations to be right. And Pharaoh gets more and more persistent. Somebody has to know what this dream means. There's got to be somebody out there that can help me out. Sometimes there's people out there, and the only answer is you. You are the one that can help them, and they're looking for you. I think sometimes we think, and we've talked about this before, like we come together as a church family to be there for each other, to love each other. You don't have to go through life alone. And sometimes we think, well, I'm not going because I don't need them. And maybe you don't. But maybe we need you. Maybe the reason why you're here is not for yourself. Maybe it's because you're going to help someone sitting next to you. I don't know. Pharaoh needed Joseph. And all of a sudden, it's dinner time, I'm sure, something like that, and the cupbearers bring in the drink to Pharaoh, and he's lamenting, I need someone to interpret this dream. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, yeah, hey, a few years ago, remember when I kind of pissed you off? But you're great today, right? Yeah, here's your favorite drink. There was a guy in the prison that heard my dream, and he heard this other guy's dream, and he interpreted it, and he was correct. And he's not like your wise guys, because he's like a different culture, from a different place. He's a foreigner. But man, that guy could do the dream interpretation. So what do? He sends the people to go get Joseph out of the prison. What's interesting is sometimes you feel like you're at the lowest of the low. See, when Joseph was with Potiphar, he was a slave, but man, he had a cushy place and cushy ride. Now all of a sudden he's in the prison, and he is at the lowest of the low, and that is when you give up typically. That is when, like, you don't get out of that. You're down in a pit and you're waiting for somebody to pick you up. But they came to Joseph, and he had to choose to get up and go with them. And he knew enough about their culture. He's like, wait a minute, before I go, clean me up. Give me a bath first. I want to get shaven here. What's interesting is he didn't go looking like a Hebrew. He knew I needed to go and look like an Egyptian. So they shaved off his beard. That was something that, the Jewish people would always have, that big beard. And he got all cleaned up. He got clean shaven. He did all these different things. And he goes and he talks to Pharaoh and he says, Pharaoh, yeah, I can't interpret your dream. Now you're thinking like, what? Why would Joseph say that? You're finally going to get this promotion, dude. You're finally going to be, able in a position to have your dream fulfilled. Why are you telling him you can't do it? And Joseph looks at him and he goes, I, Joseph, cannot interpret your dream, but the God I serve can. So tell me your dream, and the God I serve will tell me what it means, and then I will tell you. Even at the pinnacle of when all of his hard life is coming to a point, and he's in front of the guy that has the most power in his world at that time, which is the Pharaoh, he is saying, hey, I'm so great. How can I help you? No, he is saying, the God I serve is so great. How can we help you? So Joseph hears the dream. He interprets the dream. Instantly, Pharaoh's like, oh, that's it. And then Joseph goes on and says, this is what I would do if I were you. Right, why? Because Joseph knows this is a message from God. And he's got God's wisdom on him, and he tells him what he thinks he should do. And Pharaoh says, that is wise. That is good. Why don't you do it for me? And now Joseph is second in command of all of Egypt. He went from seemed like second in command of his father's house, to second command at Potiphar's house, to second in command in the prison, to now he's in second command at that time in that region, the most biggest empire kingdom of that land. Now, how does this tie into his brothers and the fulfillment of his dream? Well, part of what Pharaoh had dreamt was that there was going to be 7 years of prosperity and then 7 years of famine. So what Joseph did is he managed everything, and during the 7 years of prosperity, they stored up grain and they stored up resources, and they didn't say, ooh, we got an extra loaf of bread every night. No, they took all the excess and they stored it up. So when the 7 years of famine came, that was the only land that prospered, that had food. What's interesting here is every place he went prospered, not because they were great, but because the God that Joseph served was great and Joseph had favor. It says that Pharaoh recognized that everything he set his hand to prospered because of Joseph and the God that was over him. God didn't save Egypt because they were so amazing and they were his chosen people. He blessed Egypt because they recognized who Joseph was and the favor on his life, and they put him in charge. Again, that's one of those earthly laws, right? When you've got God's favor on you, you're going to prosper whatever you do. But then what it allowed is when God's chosen people, Jacob's family, began to starve because of the famine, and they heard that Egypt had food, they went to go get it. And eventually, if you read through the chapters here in the book of Genesis, Joseph reveals himself to them. And they bow down. Please forgive us for what we did to you. Please have mercy on us. How we treat the people who stomp on us is a show of our character. The reason why God could promote Joseph in that place and in that way to eventually be over his brothers is because he knew that the character of Joseph was going to be to bless them. Some of those brothers, if they were in that position, they might have stomped out the ones that were mean to them. Why does God give you strength? To help the ones that are weak, not to bully the ones that are weak. Why does God give you resources so that way you can bless the people around you that are in need? Not so that you can just hoard it up for yourself and end up dying with millions of dollars in the bank that did nobody any good. See, God's favor chases you so you can be a blessing to the people around you. That's why I said some of you are here to be a blessing to those around you. In the end, Joseph's dad comes, the entire family comes. Pharaoh grants them some land, and they go there. And I don't actually have this verse, Jesse. I'm super sorry. But in Genesis chapter 50, verses 18 through 21, we hear a snippet of this conversation that Joseph and his brothers have after the father dies, after Jacob dies. And the brothers don't have a heart like Joseph. And they're convinced that Joseph kept them alive and was nice to them only because their father was still alive, and that Joseph didn't want to disappoint their earthly father. See, they didn't get it that Joseph, right, didn't want to sin against God. And so they say to him, please, please don't kill us. You know, Dad said you're supposed to take good care of us even after he dies. Dad said, right? Have you ever heard brothers say, Mom said, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, these guys were old guys, and they still were doing that. Anyway, Genesis chapter 50, verse 18 says, his brothers then came and threw themselves down before Joseph. We are your slaves, they said. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? He didn't say, am I in the place of your father or the leader of the family? No, he said, am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Now, NIV kind of explains it to us, and it sounds great. But if you were grown up like me, what verse you hear in your head is, what man meant for evil, God intended for good. See, his brothers intended to harm him, but God intended to use their choices to hurt Joseph to then get him in a place of promotion. So Joseph would not only save their lives, but many lives. God puts the favor on you. So why am I saying all this? I'm telling you to pray for favor, right? Well, pray for favor. I'm going to go get a nice car. I'm going to go have a great life. You pray for favor so you can enjoy your life, but don't forget those around you. Jesus gave us one last commandment, right? He says, I give you this one last commandment. It was right before he went to the cross. And he says, love. Love your neighbor, right? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Like, I give you this last commandment. Love. Love those around you. Love the people around you. And by your love will others know that you are my followers. It is not by the cross you wear around your neck that others know that you're a Christian. It is not, what church you go to that others should know that you're a Christian. It's not by the words you say. It's not because you don't ever curse that other people should know you're a Christian. It's by your love that they will know that you are a follower of Christ. So when you pray for favor, pray that the Lord reveals to you those around you. There's this Bible verse that says, like, when you give, it shall come back to you overflowing. Why should God give you more than what you need? Right? Why doesn't he say, when you give, God gives back to you right to the brim of the cup so you can hold everything you have, and that's all yours? No, he says, it'll come back to you overflowing. Why? Because the excess that flows out of you is going to affect everybody around you. That's what your blessings do. See, God has a dream for you, and some of you feel like you haven't accomplished the dreams maybe you had for yourself, or maybe you felt like God wanted for you. You're just delayed along the way. And don't be mad while you're waiting, and you got to learn how to be patient. Be like Joseph and bless the people around him on the way. Joseph was delayed. But when he was at Potiphar's house, he still worked hard and allowed God's favor to bless Potiphar while he was there. Then he was delayed again, and he's in the prison. And he didn't just say, I'm going to sit here until the time has come for me to fulfill my dream that God gave me, and then I will use all these gifts and talents that God has given me. No, he worked hard even though he was in the pit and he wasn't where he wanted to be. and his favor from God flowed all over him and blessed everybody around him. And eventually, he was put in a position where the dream finally came true. And guess what came with it? More hard work. Joseph just didn't like, oh, I'm here in the palace and I get to sit and women feed me grapes all day. No, he worked hard. He worked really hard. And I'm sure he had days off. I'm sure he had a lot of fun. I'm sure his food was much better there than it was in the prison. I'm sure there wasn't any bed bugs or lice in the palace. But he had to work hard. So when you finally get to where your blessing is, and you feel like, okay, I've arrived, don't think that means that your favor isn't going to still affect the people around you and that hard work isn't involved. God doesn't promise us no hard work or you just live alone and just take care of yourself. He promises us this blessing in this family and this coming together. Why? Because our souls need relationship. You feel better when you help somebody else out. And if you don't feel good about how you're helping somebody else out, try helping in a different way. If I had to help you all out by digging ditches because your fields are flooding, I would not feel good about that. I mean, I wouldn't. I'd be like, man, this sucks. Can I give you money? Let's go rent one of those bobcats or something, right? Now, there's some of you, though, that if I said, well, hey, this person's basement flooded, they got sewer problems, the fields are flooding, come help me clean out the basement. They're going to be like, I'll go dig the ditch. Why? Because we've got different gifts. I would much rather be in the basement helping them organize and cleaning their basement than out digging the ditch. I don't know what your favor is. I don't know, maybe you haven't prayed for it yet. Maybe you haven't had a chance to work hard and to see how God is going to bless you and the people around you. I don't know what your dream is. Maybe it's been so long you let it go. But look down in your heart and say, where am I meant to be? What am I supposed to be when I grow up? That's what I always ask. What am I supposed to be? What are you supposed to be? You might be like, well, Mary, right? I'm a nurse. Well, but is that your dream? Is that what you really want to be when you're all grown up? Maybe that's just your job. And your dream, right, is to run a women's program that helps women that are pregnant, or that your job is to work in a daycare and to love on babies, or your job is going to be to have food and you sell food on the weekends, but then during the week you go into areas where they don't have anything. I don't know what you want to be when you grow up or what you're hoping to be. But all of us still have some more growing to do. And I went way over. You guys have been wonderful. Let me pray for all of you. Father God, I thank you so much for every single person here. I thank you that you have called them to this place and to this moment to hear this message of hope and to be reminded that you want to bless them. Your favor follows them, that they just need to ask for it. They need to ask for it to be activated. They need to ask for it to be happening in their workplace and in their homes and in their neighborhoods and in their families. And Father God, just begin pouring it out. Send your angels before them to soften the hearts of those who need to bring blessings into their lives. Those like Pharaoh that are out there that don't even know they exist right now, that need them and that they can promote them. Begin setting the stage and getting everything ready so that the moment it happens, they're able to be brought right up into a position of promotion. And Father God, all these times when the promotion felt like a punishment, something bad happened, what men meant for evil, you can intend it for good. Help us to be patient while we're delayed. And while we are waiting, we can be a blessing to those around us. Help us and watch over us. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Amen. I know the communion is out, but we're going to wait till next Sunday. So come next Sunday ready, and we will do that right after worship. And we will see you next Sunday at 6 o'clock. The Blessing Shop is open if you need anything from it. The Practical Needs Pantry. It's been over a year since we changed the name of it, and I'm going to still keep calling it the Blessing Shop. So if you need a blessing, go over to the Practical Needs Pantry. Have a great day. Thanks.